My name is Kathleen Omollo, and I work for the Open.Michigan initiative at University of Michigan. Today I'm going to talk about open licenses and intellectual property, or more simply put, how you can share and remix legally and easily. This presentation was put together for the Community College Consortium for Open Educational Resources. I want to begin by talking a little bit about my path with Open Educational Resources, or OER. I joined the OER activities at University of Michigan in January 2008 as a graduate student volunteer to help a professor publish his course. The Open.Michigan initiative has two primary goals: to sustain a thriving culture of sharing knowledge at the university, and to provide comprehensive public access to all of the university's scholarly output. One thing that attracted me to the field of open education is that it expands one's community of peers, learners, and teachers. With open education, there's a larger common pool that people can draw from, and one to which they are also empowered to contribute back to by customizing their learning experiences for their own context. It's not just about the content, it's about the connections to potential collaborators and to different mindsets. I admit that prior to my role at Open.Michigan, when I heard people talk about copyright or other types of intellectual property, I tended to zone out because I considered it not relevant to me, not interesting, and needlessly complex. As a byproduct of my work with Open.Michigan, I became a sort of copyright guru and now appreciate its relevance, its purpose, and have learned approaches to simplify how to explain and how to follow copyright. For our talk today, I want to focus on four things. First, how copyright affects you as producers and consumers of educational content within and beyond the classroom. 2, explain the purpose of intellectual property and the different types that you may encounter. Third, define the characteristics of open content. And fourth, explain the motivations and mechanics of open licenses as a method of sharing and attributing content. Let's begin with some interactive exercises and trivia. Yes or no? Any presentation slides that I would use in the classroom, I could also publish as open educational resources simply by posting them online. The answer to this one is no. Your classroom is considered a closed audience for enrolled students. This means you are allowed certain exceptions given the nature of the use for educational purpose and the restricted audience. Instructors often have content created by others in their lecture slides, images from textbooks, found from websites, or even content that was created by a faculty member who taught the course during a previous semester. This is copyrighted content that you can use in the classroom, but you cannot publish in a public space. You would need to get permission for content not authored by you in order to share it publicly. Next question. Which of these are qualities of open content? A, free, B, public access, C, terms of use that allows copies and adaptations, D, free and public, or E, free, public, and licensed to allow copies and adaptations. This is a bit of a trick question because some organizations have different definitions. However, the most commonly accepted definition is E, that is content that is free, public, and licensed to allow reuse, repurposing, and redistribution. Which of these is necessary to copyright a work? A, publication, B, copyright symbol, C, registration, D, both the copyright symbol and registration, or E, none of the above. The answer here is E. Copyright is automatic. You do not need to register at the Copyright Office. You do not need to make it public through some form of print or digital publication, and you do not even need to include the copyright symbol. Technically, you don't even need to include the author's name. There are reasons why it's helpful to include these things, so you may track how the work is being used, but none of them are requirements. If none of those are requirements, which of these ones are? A, tangible form, B, effort, C, creative expression, D, uniqueness, or E, tangible format and creative expression? The answer here is E. In order for something to be copyrighted, it needs to be fixed in some tangible form. So recorded, sculpted, written, drawn. Copyright does not apply to non-tangible works. For example, a conversation or speech that is spoken, but there's no audio or video recording and no transcript is not actually copyrighted because it is not tangible. The other criteria is creative expression. So there must be some element of creativity behind it. It cannot be something basic and obvious, such as a list arranged by date or by name, a basic stick figure which anyone could draw, a table of numbers, or a simple mathematic or scientific formula. Now let me talk about why it's not the other ones. Uniqueness is tricky. Something may be unique, but not necessarily creative. Likewise, something may involve a lot of effort, but it may not be creative. For example, organizing lists of names and contact details alphabetically, such as in a phone book white pages, is not eligible for copyright, although it is very labor-intensive. Copyright is technically a bundle of 5 rights, and these 5 rights are something that are controlled by the copyright owner. So the copyright owner can determine whether or not something is reproduced or copied, whether or not other people build upon it or create derivative works, the distribution, such as distribution through different publishers or different print or other media channels. The copyright owner also controls the right to publicly display a work, such as in a museum, as well as the right to publicly perform a work, such as a stage play. Last question. Another term that you may have heard during copyright discussions is public domain. What do you think this term means? A, publicly available information, or something that is common knowledge. B, something which is not under copyright or no rights reserved. Or C, both of these definitions. The correct answer here is C. Both of these meanings are common in different countries and jurisdictions. Later on, I'll talk more about option B and the reasons why something may not be under copyright and may no longer have any rights reserved. So far, we've been talking about copyright, but there are multiple types of intellectual property. Copyright applies to tangible works with some element of creativity. They protect the expression, but not the underlying idea. Trademarks apply to phrases, images, or styles associated with a particular brand. They are a symbol of goodwill and are used in business or commerce. Their protection is based on the distinctiveness of a brand in a particular market or geographic region. Patents, on the other hand, apply to inventions or processes and practices. And they apply to processes and practices that are both novel and non-obvious. The last one, trade secrets, is a bit different in the way that the only way trade secrets are protected are to keep them secret. If ever the processes for trade secrets were shared, such as the recipe to Coca-Cola, they would become public domain. Now, copyright, trademark, and patents all encourage people to share and to promote knowledge, in exchange for granting the creator exclusive rights to those creations for a limited amount of time. Of these four, the most relevant to OER are copyright and trademark. When you create something and share it, how do you communicate to others how you would like them to use it? What intended uses are you signaling to your audience? By default, all of those 5 rights of the copyright holder are reserved automatically, which means every single use requires going back to the copyright owner to get permission. For example, if a colleague at Institution A wants to use your work, they need to ask permission. If another colleague at Institution B wants to use it in the same manner but for a different audience, they also require permission, and so on for other uses and for other people in your audience who may want to use it. Open licenses reduce that transaction cost. They change it from the default of all rights reserved to some rights reserved. When using an open license, you retain the copyright to the original work, but give permission to others to copy and distribute your materials, provided they give you credit, and use it only in the conditions in which you specify. You are essentially giving permission in advance for some uses, while still keeping the option for people to contact you for permission for other uses beyond that. This spectrum of giving permission for some uses in advance and requiring each permission to come directly to you is a balance of propagation versus control. Last year, EdTech Times published a great piece about this. If your goal is to influence and to build authority for your expertise and your content, then open licenses are one way to scale that. If your primary goal is monetary gain, then all rights reserved may be better so you can track each use. You need a certain level of authority and influence in order to attract paying customers, though. This is one reason why we see hybrid models where a subset or excerpt of a collection is shared under an open license, and other pieces are shared as all rights reserved. So if all rights reserved, or 1C, is the default, then some rights reserved with 2Cs is an alternative. Now, open licenses such as Creative Commons enable others to make marginal improvements or enhancements to build upon your work. So this includes revisions and remixes, duplication and copies, to multiple websites, as well as making available offline, making things available print as well as electronic, allowing for translations, and other sorts of types of transformations. So for example, you could take a learning module that was originally designed to be shared using a desktop or laptop computer and convert the content to something which is more friendly to mobile users. Are there any questions up to this point? Licenses are contracts that let people know how they may use a copyrighted work under certain conditions. With licenses, copyright owners may keep their rights and license any one or combination of the rights of that bundle of 5 to individuals or groups. They may also sign over all 5 of those rights completely. Creative Commons licenses are legal contracts. Creative Commons licenses are called public non-excludable licenses. This means that they apply to the general public, anyone in the world, and they may exist in parallel with other terms of use for the same work. With Creative Commons, there are 4 possible conditions that you may choose, which you may mix and match to create 6 different licenses. One feature common to all of them is attribution, or the moral right to be named as the author of the work. This attribution clause is referred to as by or by, and represented by the person icon. Non-commercial, which is represented by the $sign with the line through it, or NC for short, is another option that you can choose. Non-commercial, at its most common interpretation, means that you cannot sell a work at a profit. There's a broader range of interpretations, though. At its strictest, it means that no money can change hands. And at another end, it allows charging in order to recuperate costs. Another option is SA, or share alike, which is the counterclockwise arrow. And share alike is what's called a viral clause. It means that any adaptation, so any translation into another language, any remix into another medium or format, or anything that directly builds upon the work, has to adopt the same license as the original. The 4th option you can choose is ND, or no derivatives, which is represented by the equal sign. No derivatives gives people permission to copy or distribute the work, but only if they do not alter in any way. This means no excerpts, no edits, and no adaptations. Of these 4 possible conditions, the CC BY, or attribution only license, is the most flexible. It's the one that we use as our default at Open.Michigan. It's also the one that the Creative Commons former group CC Learn used to recommend as a default for open educational resources. The handout from CC Learn is available in the Open.Michigan info kit under info sheets if you're interested in learning more. As I mentioned earlier, Creative Commons licenses allow copyright owners to retain their full copyright and therefore offer other licenses or agreements in parallel. Here is one example from a computer programming open textbook authored by a professor at our School of Information. Dr. Chuck Severance chose the CC BY NCSA license as a default, but included a copyright detail page in the appendix, which specified additional allowable uses. He gave instructors to print some or all of the book for their enrolled students for commercial or non-commercial uses, as long as they provided attribution. He allowed translations into other languages, including for commercial or non-commercial uses, as long as people licensed the translations under an attribution share-alike license. Lastly, the author also encouraged people to contact him if they wanted to use some or all of the book for uses other than the ones he had already stated. Now, how can you simply integrate open licenses into your work? There are 4 main steps. The first one, which we've talked about, is to license your own work. The second step is to use and build upon others' openly licensed works. Third, to properly attribute the works that you build upon. And lastly, to make sure you share your work publicly online so that you can gain maximum visibility for your work. Just like you do not need to register in order for something to be copyrighted, you do not need to register in order to openly license something. All you need to do is include the license name, link, the year, the author, and the copyright owner. This license information should be included on the file itself so that when people download it, they still know the author, terms of use, and other relevant information. You may notice on this slide that I am listed as the author, but the copyright owner is my institution. In my institution, the default is the institution holds the copyright to the works created by its employees. Some exceptions at my institution include faculty works, librarian works, as well as student works created for academic courses, which are owned by those individual authors. Now, when you want to attribute someone else's work, the main things that you want to remember are to include the author, the title of the work, the source where you found it, which may be the name as well as a hyperlink, and the appropriate Creative Commons license information. And this can be attributed within a page, for example, for images, or it may also be attributed at the end of a presentation. Now, if you're interested in some additional training and practice, I can point you to some other resources that we've developed at Open.Michigan. What I've tried to do today is to give you a high-level overview of copyright and to some extent trademark, as some of the legal issues you need to consider when creating and using educational content, especially for public audiences. If you're interested in diving a little deeper, I encourage you to look more at our Describe program, a distributed model for creating open educational resources. It's actually the program that sparked my interest in OER back in 2008, and one in which I spent a few years facilitating and refining. If you go to open.umich.edu/describe, you will see this overview and some of our templates for how we train others to review materials for copyright, product endorsement and trademark, and privacy issues before they can be shared publicly. We have a course up on the School of Open, a number of guides, and even a paper-based activity to simplify the process of walking people through how to do copyright clearance. And it's an activity that can be done in under 45 minutes. Now, as I mentioned, before you share something publicly, you have to consider some things. Especially when you're using your institutional branding, things have to be done legally because they will be very visible. As I mentioned, this includes copyright, product endorsement or trademark, as well as privacy. And this Describe model is the foundation of the process that we use to get people new to OER and new to copyright, and generally new to online publishing, up to speed with the basic things that they need to review and consider before something can be shared with a massive or public audience. For example, we have a number of these resources that we've used to train media specialists who support the University of Michigan's massive open online courses, or MOOCs. I want to highlight one of the resources from the Describe collection of guides and tools in particular, and that's our Attribution Key. This legend is included as the second page of all of our resources, and it tells people what the image icons mean below our images. We may keep images that are Creative Commons licensed or GNU license, which is the license that Wikipedia used to use before the community switched to the CC BY-SA license. We may also keep something because it's in the public domain. And it could be in the public domain because it had a copyright term that expired, the copyright owner dedicated it to the public domain, or it could have been authored by a U.S. federal government agency. You'll notice at the bottom we also have a category called Make Your Own Assessment. And these are works which are not explicitly licensed, but we believe we have permission. We believe that we are able to use them for certain reasons. And one of those reasons are works which may be ineligible for copyright protection in the U.S. and that they do not exhibit any creative expression, such as a standard representation or scientific formula. Another reason we may keep something, though we do this very infrequently, is to keep something under fair use, such as a small thumbnail or screenshot, which is used as an illustrative example accompanying text. I would like to conclude with some takeaways. First, remember that all rights reserved is the default. You are allowed certain exceptions to use copyrighted content in the closed audience of a traditional classroom. However, when you share publicly or with a wide audience, such as a MOOC, you need permission. Now, using open licenses, you can use, exchange, and remix educational materials both legally, globally, and efficiently. Now, also remember, the key is that what you create is relevant to others. This means they have relevance outside of your own institution and the original audience. By incorporating openly licensed or public domain content into your work, you can amplify the visibility and impact of your work, all while retaining your copyright and preserving attribution. Thank you very much for your attention today. Here you can see our email and website information if you'd like to learn more about Open.Michigan. On this slide, you will also see the link where you can download the slides, the video, as well as other speaker notes for my talk today. Thank you.